Well, hello everybody, and a very warm welcome to this webinar on the Princess Royal Training Awards, and particularly on the evidence and how to make the most of presenting your evidence to the assessors. I'm Michael Osbaldeston. I'm joined by my colleague Remy, and we also have with us today Fenella, who's our Deputy Chief Assessor and who's going to talk in detail about the evidence. Welcome, Fenella.
Thank you, Michael. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, thank you very much indeed. In fact, Fenella and the rest of the assessors are with us today and tomorrow for their training sessions. So we've hit the top note in terms of a whole collection of assessors today. So it's great to have you with us, Fenella, and to be able to share with the people who are applying for the awards exactly what the assessors will be looking for in terms of the evidence. And I think just to remind people, these awards are around evidence. And during the course of this webinar, we'll just remind you a little bit about the awards. We'll talk about the application process, although I suspect most people on the webinar will have looked at that already. We'll look at the evidence and we'll just discuss exactly what is being looked for in the Princess Royal Training Awards. So, just to remind everybody, the Princess Royal Training Awards are an evidence-based award recognising the impact that training or learning development has on an organisation and its people. They are a robust award. They're not easy to get, but they are very accessible. And we will do absolutely we can to ensure that you are supported through the process and that you have the best possible opportunity of presenting the story you want to tell us so that we can assess it and hopefully recognise what you're doing with a royal award. And the Princess Royal is very much part of the process. She is the final adjudication as to who gets these awards. So they're done in conjunction with City and Guilds through MLR, who are an independent assessment organisation that we contract, and the Princess Royal. So if you get one of these awards, you really have deserved it. Now, during the course of the webinar, if you've got questions that you want to ask, please either type them at the side in the box on the right hand side of your screen, or if you want to ask the question, just put your hand up, click on that little box with the hand, and we'll see you there on the screen and we'll unmute you and you can talk to us. Sometimes it's easy to ask a question, just type it. So we're very happy to answer verbal questions as well as answering questions that come in on email. So we're now in the 5th year of the awards, and we are excited to be able to be working with a whole range of organisations towards making their applications this year. Those who are successful in being recognised for the impact that learning and development has on their organisation and people will join a very powerful alumni, and the alumni is increasingly important in bringing together professionals across the learning and development world to share ideas and to, in fact, build even better things for the future. Now, on the screen at the moment, we've got some of the organisations who have achieved the award, and we put that up really to indicate that size doesn't matter, sector doesn't matter, geographical positioning doesn't matter. Any employer or any organisation working with volunteers anywhere in the United Kingdom is encouraged to apply for an award and to be recognised for achieving a standard of excellence. And the standard of excellence is what you're aiming for. It's not a winner. Anybody who achieves a standard is recognised with the Royal Award. You don't have to buy a table for 10. These awards are free to enter. The Palace event is free to attend. And afternoon tea with the Princess is a great way to celebrate your achievements. And the alumni, there is no cost incurred in being a member of the alumni. But what we do recognise is that people have to put in time and effort to gather together the evidence and to make a presentation which will achieve and demonstrate to us that the standard of excellence has been achieved by the applicant. Just looking at the names on the screen at the moment, we've got big multinational organisations like IBM. We have charities like the Clink, who train their staff so that they could provide superb training to prisoners in hospitality and catering in prisons around the country and reduce reoffending through it. We have the Co-op in East Anglia, who did some brilliant work in dementia training for their staff to enable them to work with their customers more effectively. We have people like Gateshead College, who had 2 awards last year. So you can apply for more than 1 award if you've got different programs. They did one around mental health and well-being, and also one around staff development and coaching. So Gateshead College put in 2 applications last year and was successful in both of them. So if you've got 2 really good programs, then feel free to put in more than 1 application. In fact, the Royal Bank of Scotland has achieved the standard with different pieces of training each year that the awards have run so far. So that's just to give you a bit of a clue of the sort of organisations who've got them. We encourage, regardless of size, regardless of sector, you're not in competition with each other because you're presenting what's important to you. And we ask you to do that online or on a Word-based document. We call it the application plan and application form. That sounds a bit heavy duty. What we're really doing is offering you a pathway, a template, to gather together your thoughts and present them to us in an orderly way so that the assessors can make a reasonable assessment of what you presented to us. So if an application form sounds a bit difficult, forget it's an application form and think of it as a guided pathway that allows you to work through your thoughts and principles and the things you've done and why you've done it, and presents information to us in a way which the assessors can then extract the elements which are worthy of recognition. Those 2 documents are critical, so download them, print them off, use them in your planning process. Interestingly, as I say, we are going through 2 days of training with our assessors, and the assessors have no more information than you have on those 2 documents. So there is no hidden agenda. We're not trying to trip you up. We're not trying to catch you out. We're always trying to catch people in, not catch them out. So we will, as I say, do everything we can to facilitate you telling your story, helping us understand what you've done and understand the impact. Excuse me. So the whole of the process revolves around 3 hallmarks of excellence. And again, this is to help you break down your story, to make it more tellable and to make it more understandable by the assessors. And those 3 hallmarks are quite simply: why have you done what you've done? How have you done what you've done? And what impact has it had on your organisation and people? So the why is around the programme that you're presenting to us that's in response to either an opportunity or to a challenge you've had. It may be a regulatory challenge, it may be your customers, it may be your staff requesting it, whatever it is you've chosen to do. And how does that fit into your overall strategy of your organisation, where training and learning development is integral to all the things you do. So the first part of the story you tell us is, well, we've done this and we're really proud about it, really excited about it, and it fits into our strategy because of this. Then you tell us how you did it, and the how bit is, all right, how did you design the program? Did you get some people in from outside? Did you do it internally? How did you deliver it? What sort of, did you use technology? What sort of things enable you to get the training and learning development you'd identified to the right people in the most appropriate way? And then thirdly, you say, and the impact that it's had on the organisation is, and the impact that it's had on the people involved is. So not massively complicated. If you break it down to the why, how, and the what, we just need you to tell us that story in some detail and with evidence. So, evidence, Fenella.
Absolutely, yes. As Michael said earlier, these are evidence-based awards, so evidence is absolutely key when you're completing your application. In the early years of the programme, we've been now running for 4 years. This is our 5th year. We did have some applications in the past that didn't provide any evidence at all. They just gave us a number of statements and a narrative about what they've done. Some of them sounded brilliant, but if there isn't any evidence there, then they unfortunately don't progress to the next stage of our application. So it's really important that you provide evidence. You need to provide evidence for each of those hallmarks. So Michael's talking about the hallmarks 1, 2, and 3, and you need to provide evidence for each of those. It's not enough just to provide evidence, say, for the first hallmark about why you did what you did. We need to see what your story has been, how it's developed, and the evidence that is there to support that. Particularly in hallmark 3, which is what is your impact. on your organisation and on your people, we really need to see that you've got evidence to show that it's made a difference. What difference has it made, and how did you evidence that? How did you know? So that's what we're looking at when, as assessors, we're assessing your application. So basically, the purpose of providing evidence is to support the statements that you make. So for the narrative part of the form, you will make statements about, you know, what your issue was, and then the evidence part of the form, you can actually upload evidence to support that. And I'll go on in a minute about the sorts of evidence that we want. But there are limits to the amount of evidence that you can provide. In the first year, we didn't have any limits, and we did have, I think, 67 pieces of evidence that were provided.
There's an assessor still going through it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So we have got limits, and that's to make it fair and equitable for all applicants. So you get 1 document per hallmark, so that's a total of 3 documents. Each attachment can be no more than 2 megabytes, so we can't have huge big videos or anything like that. Also, you do get 500 words per attachment as well. So those 500 words are additional to the word count that you get in the main body of the application form. And we know those word counts are really tight in those hallmarks. So you do get an extra 1,500 words as part of your evidence. And you can use those words in charts and graphs, but you can also use them as a narrative if you want to. And you can also use them in extracts of documents that you might want to include. So we do have a word count there for the evidence, but it's sort of fairly generous and does add to the word count from your application form. We do say please no external links. Again, we've had in the past links to perhaps YouTube or TV programs, all sorts of things. We can't look at those, unfortunately, to make it equitable. So moving on to the evidence, what are we actually wanting? So we need you to make a link between the application, the body of the application, the statements you make, and then evidence to support that. So we're looking for things like business metrics that you may have. They can be internal to your organisation, or sometimes they might be sector data. So say if you're having an issue, perhaps recruiting staff, and you know that that's a sector issue, you can include information from the sector that might be produced externally. That's absolutely fine. We also really welcome charts and graphs, because that's a really simple way sometimes to provide information, and much easier to present than to actually have a narrative. We're looking also for the before and after picture in your story. So we're looking at your starting point. Why did you do what you wanted to do? Why did you put the training on? So we're looking at that before picture and evidence to support that before picture. And then what happened afterwards? What was the impact, and how did the two compare? So we need quantifiable and comparative data, so we can see where you started from and actually where you ended up. It's also really important to include the learner voice in this, so the voice of your staff, because one of the things we're looking for is actually what difference did the learning make to your people. So it'd be really good just to have a couple of quotes from staff or from customers to bring your application to life, really. And then if you do get through to the next stage, which is when we come to do an on-site visit, we can actually talk to those people in more detail and ask them about the impact the learning has made on them.
Is it probably worth saying at this stage, Fenella, that we don't dictate what the evidence should be? The evidence has to be relevant to each and every individual application, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. So we don't give a pro forma about we want to have this particular piece of evidence. It is absolutely what is relevant to you and your organisation. So we don't give any prescriptive information or advice around that, because we don't know what the training is, what your reasoning is. We just want to see that you have actually got evidence to support whatever it is that you're telling us. Okay, so yeah, avoid hyperlinks. So we don't look at those. Also, avoid photos. People love to put pictures of people holding certificates or being at an awards ceremony. If we come to see you, we'll be able to see your people and they'll be able to talk to us. So don't waste your 2 megabytes per hallmark on photos. I know it is a favourite and people do love to do it, but
we like live people, don't we?
We do, yes, we do. And please give us charts and graphs instead. Give us metrics, we don't mind. Okay, so some do's and don'ts. So you've got to really keep your evidence relevant. This isn't always the case. So what the assessors are doing, they're looking at the statements that you've made in your application, and then we're looking for direct evidence to back up what you've said. Okay. Also, you don't have to give us huge reports or whole pieces of information. You can do cut and paste relevant pieces from a document, say your annual report. If you cut and paste the relevant statements or relevant metrics or charts and graphs that you need to include, that's absolutely fine. When we come and see you, we can actually see the whole thing when we're there, so that's absolutely fine.
It's probably worth just repeating that in ways. I think some people get a bit confused about that we don't need to see the whole of a document. We just need to have it referenced so that we can look into it further when we come and do the visit. Yes,
absolutely. So that's fine, just to include extracts. In fact, it might be difficult to include the whole thing anyway. And also you must tell us about evidence in your application form, because we have had in the past where we've come on a visit and then the applicant has said, oh, we've got all this other evidence available which hasn't actually been mentioned in the application, and unfortunately we can't look at that. So please do mention any evidence that you've got in your application, and then we can look at it when we come. And also don't forget to say what it is. Sometimes we get extracts from documents and we're not quite sure what it relates to or where it comes from. So just a little line to say this is from the annual report in 2015 or whenever it is.
It's really important for the applicants put themselves in your shoes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you're bringing together the evidence in the application form and linking it back to the statements in the narrative, if you put yourself in the shoes of the assessor and think, what would make it easier for the assessor to understand what I'm saying, that makes a big difference when you come to read them.
Yeah, absolutely, because the assessors are starting from a knowledge base of 0 about your learning and development, your training program. So sometimes that does get forgotten, because often if you're in L&D and you're so close to it, you've been delivering and living and breathing this for a number of years, you can forget some of those basic things. Okay. Also, don't repeat anything anywhere.
Do what?
Don't repeat.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Very good, Michael. Don't forget, it's one assessor who looks at your application form. So we will look at it as a holistic document. So you don't need to repeat anything anywhere. We do often get this. Something's repeated in Hallmark 1 and then repeated again. We don't need to have that.
That holistic approach is really important, isn't it, in terms of people telling their stories to us, that the whole of the application has to look and feel like a holistic presentation.
Yes.
And that's why it's a single assessor that looks at each application rather than a group of assessors looking at different bits of it.
Yeah.
So it has to have that sort of entirety to it in the way that it comes across.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, it is something we want to hear your story. So the application tells your story, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for it as a holistic one piece of work. Okay, so just to move on to what the assessors are looking for, please do be specific in what you're telling us. That's really, really helpful, because we know the word count is really tight. So don't waste anything telling us about generalizations that we might find it difficult to understand. Again, we do need to have tangible evidence that can support what you're saying. But also, having said that as well, we will talk to learners when we come and visit you. So we can have quotes also as well from learners. That's absolutely fine. So what really the application form is doing is opening that door to a visit. Because if there's enough in your application form for us to then come and visit you, that's the visit's the second part of the process. And a lot of people do fall at that first assessment stage because there isn't quite enough evidence there to open that door to a visit. Sometimes that's because the application is a little bit early. So if you're finding it hard to find evidence to support hallmark 3, which is the impact part of the application, it may well be that the learning is still taking place and the impact hasn't really started to fully show itself yet. So we do find
you don't go home empty-handed at that point, do you? If you don't get past that first stage, the assessors provide significant feedback.
Yes, absolutely, and we'll provide that detailed feedback for each of the hallmarks, and you'll get that once the assessment stage is finished. Some people like to apply just to get the feedback if they think it's a little bit early anyway, because it is constructive feedback that you can use in your organisation anyway. Okay, the top tips. Please do try to use headlines to describe each piece of information. That really helps us. Or some people use actually little code. They might say evidence 1 is called E1, and they might, you don't have to do that, but that does really help us as assessors. As we were saying before, use extracts from lengthy documents, so it's fine to copy and paste or to snip tables and graphs just to get the information that's really relevant to your application. You may want to highlight information in colour if you're worried it's going to get lost. So if it's a bit of a narrative and you want to highlight something, again, that's absolutely fine. But please do keep it concise and easy to read. That would really help us as assessors. Okay, so it is good practice to get someone to read your application, because as I was saying earlier, sometimes you're so close to your programme that it's useful to get somebody who perhaps doesn't know too much about it to have a look at it, and then they can be your critical friend and advise you, oh right, why were you doing this again? And it's useful to get some feedback there, but try not to do it by committee. Try not to get too many people to look at it, because sometimes you can lose that energy that you first have when you've done that first draft. And again, we're looking for you to tell us a story about what was your issue, what happened, what did you do, and then what was the impact. And we are actually, as an assessor team, marking you against the criteria that is included in the application planner and the application form that Michael was talking about earlier. So we are actually scoring you, so please do stick to those criteria, because you will score more highly if you actually answer those questions and then are able to evidence what you've said.
Those criteria are designed to take you on a journey, aren't they? So
yes.
They're written and designed so that when you start the process, it allows you to focus on each of those elements as you begin to build the story that you present to us. So using those criteria and seeing how those criteria balance is a really important part of building a successful application. And they've been devised in such a way as to help you extract from yourselves and your colleagues, because you won't be able to do this on your own. So work out what you need to collect from various colleagues, work out the sort of things where you might have gaps, and begin to fill it in. And then the assessor will have that whole story in front of them from which to make the appropriate assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you're struggling to fill in any part of the application, or you're struggling to upload evidence, or you just want some help or want to talk it through with someone, that's absolutely fine. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. The team is really ready to help you. They'd be delighted to receive an email, or if you want to call them, that's absolutely fine. It just so you don't struggle with something. We want you to achieve. We want you to submit a successful application, and we are there to
we're
help
trying to catch people in.
Absolutely.
Not catch them out.
Yeah,
this is not about finding fault. This is about enabling you to share the brilliant work you're doing and get other people to see it and recognise it, get royal recognition for it, and get celebrated for the impact that you're making. Now, assessors really like jargon, don't they?
Oh, goodness me. No, we don't. We're actually from all different sector backgrounds, the assessor team. So please do avoid your sector jargon and avoid acronyms unless you tell us what they mean, because it's very difficult to assess an application when you're not really quite sure what is being spoken about. So please do try to.
An acronym, alphabet soup is really hard to plough through, isn't it? So
it is, yeah,
those acronyms that can be a killer. So do spell out acronyms first time around, or put it in the evidence if you need to. But please, again, put yourself in the shoes of the assessor. Imagine you're receiving this great pile of applications and you're working through them, and think, how can I make the assessor's life more doable and enable them to see the brilliant work that I'm actually doing at the moment? That's really important. But again, I think it's really important to stress that the evidence we're looking for is the evidence that's relevant to you and your application, which is why we can't define that. Only you can define the evidence that you want to present to us. So this is your chance to tell your story. We want to listen to your story and hear your story and see how it's underpinned, but we can't dictate to you what that looks like. But as Fenella said, if you get stuck at any point, give us a call, send us an email. We will chat to you right the way through to the closing date, which is the end of March. 31st of March is the closing date. Obviously, applications are open at the moment. And if you manage to get a draft into us by Friday, we can have a look at it in draft form. So if you want to send a bulleted point draft in, or just the ideas that you're putting forwards, and what sort of evidence you would be attaching to it, we will give you a brief overview as to how well you're doing on it. But that's the closing date for that is this Friday, so it's really quite tight. But lots, looking down the list of the people on the webinar, we've got some people who've already done it, and we wouldn't like you to miss out. So if you're at the point where you've got a draft in place, then submit it to us. We'll have a look at it. We'll get it back to you within a couple of weeks, so that you can. How many days, Remy?
10 days.
10 days, sorry, yes. Remy always tells me I forget these details wrong. But that's an opportunity this year that we haven't done before. But it does help you get some initial feedback as to how well you're doing with the application. So 31st of March is the closing date. Then the assessors knuckle down and get on to some very hard work, and it really is hard work. After the initial assessment, we go into moderation. You wouldn't imagine City Hills wouldn't do a moderation exercise. At that point, we know which ones will be going forwards with the potential for an award. We also know at that point which ones will not go forward this year. But each and every one of those that doesn't go forward gets detailed feedback to help them build better applications for the future. And that's, again, it's that we try never to close the door on you. We always want to leave the door ajar and allow you to have another chance to come through the door at another stage. So we will give you as much support as we can at that point. After the moderation, the visits take place. Now, the visits, Fenella, are exciting, fascinating, motivating. And what are you looking for as assessors on the visit?
So the visit, we're really looking to dig more deeply into what you've told us in the application. So we want to talk to the people who have designed and developed your program. We want to talk to people who've studied on it. Particularly, we really want to talk to the learners, your staff who have undertaken the training. That's one of the most important things. We really want to talk to them about what they've learned and how they've put it into practice. We would also like to see senior members of your organisation, so we can also talk to them about how the training has had an impact on the organisation as a whole. And we will give you quite detailed information about who we'd like to see and when we'd like to come to visit you. So that is a collaborative process we'll go through with you. You can set the agenda for that visit, but we just tell you who we'd like to see, and also the evidence that we'd like to see, because we like to actually see that it exists in reality, and we just like to read some of those reports and some of the data that you've referred to. at the visit.
But it's not an inspection, is it?
No, absolutely not.
It's very different to an inspection. It's a
Yeah.
collaborative venture. It's an opportunity for you to put before us the people you want us to talk to.
Yeah.
There's a discussion before the visit takes place as to what the assessors are looking for and how that half day should run. It takes about 3 hours.
Yeah.
But it is not an inspection. It is not the assessors coming in to find fault.
No, absolutely. No, again, we are
Really
trying to
important.
catch you in.
Yes.
We're not trying to catch you out. We're not trying to set traps for you. We really want to see in more detail what you've been doing and the impact that it's had.
And I stress that because I know when we've been to some of the major banks and they say, well, it's not like the way we do visits. And we go, no, it's not like the way you do visits because we're not looking for faults. It's not like a financial inspection of a bank branch. This is really what us coming in to listen to you telling your story in face to face.
Yeah.
And I have to say, each of the assessors, when they go out, Sitting Hill's ambassador will go out as well. And the people who come back from those visits are more motivated than virtually anything we ever do with our staff. I have to say, this year with the virus, of course, we may have to do this slightly differently. So watch this space. We'll see how things progress over the next couple of months in the UK. But we are obviously taking into account the fact that we may have to respond to doing this in a slightly different way this year, but I'm sure we can sort that out. But we are aware of that. So if that's something you're worried about, don't worry about it. We will do our best to sort that out. If you get through that stage, and if the chief assessor, the report that goes to the chief assessor, it says that you should receive an award, it then goes to a commission. And the commission are people from the L&D world and who are highly respected. They then present their recommendations to the Princess Royal. And it's not until the Princess Royal has received the recommendations at the end of July that anybody has got an award. So when people come on the visit, they do not know if you're going to get an award or not. All they know is what they're going to advise, and they can't tell you that, obviously. And the Princess Royal then makes a final adjudication, and we make the announcement on the 15th of August, which is her birthday. So at that point, you get a letter and an email. Then we gather people together during September to help with promotion and publicity and understand how to use social media. If you're a big company, you probably do that anyway. If you're a small organization, you may not have that capacity. So we bring people together to help one another and to do that. And all being well, at the end of October, early November, the Princess Royal presents the awards personally at St. James's Palace. That's not a bad afternoon, is it, Fenella?
Yeah, no, it's a lovely occasion, I have to say.
There's some very nice cakes and quite a lot of champagne. So it's a great way to celebrate people's achievement. But that's not the end of it. That's not the end of it. That's in many ways only the beginning, because the alumni gathering people together who've achieved the standard of excellence is a really powerful way of supporting and enabling the learning and development community to go to even greater things. We've got an alumni event down in South Wales next week. We've got 40 odd organisations attending that. It's a great way for professionals who are achieving excellence to come together and share excellence, build on each other's excellence and learn from one another. So very much part of becoming a member of the community of excellence, become a member of the community of the Princess Royal Training Awards, is this opportunity to go forwards and to do even greater works. So just a reminder, if you've got any questions, pop them on the emails at the sign or wave your hand. I'm going to get Remy to check up and down the list of names, see if we've got anybody waving their hands. Can't see anything at the moment, but if anybody does want to ask a question, then please feel free to do that. The assessment process is on the screen. There is significant impact if you do get the award, and the impact that we're looking for is that organisations, and we do a lot of research with people who get the award and with people who don't get the award, interestingly, because we want the process to be useful in its own right. And we know that people find it useful to be reflective, to review what they've done, to think in a logical way as to what they've done, and then have the opportunity to present it. Interestingly, half the organisations who get the awards get an increase in budget. And that's brilliant news for the L&D community, because what it means is that rather than people asking for budget and saying they deserve it because they're doing a good thing, actually Sitting Hills and the Princess Royal saying you're doing a great thing. And therefore the discussion with the finance director, with the evidence in your hand of the impact that you have had, can be a very powerful conversation, even more powerful when you've got the Princess Royal's name on the top of the certificate. So one of the things that we're doing for the L&D community is helping them showcase the brilliant work that they're doing. And as you can see, people like RBS have got awards each year. And in fact, they use the model, the application model, to sense check all the work that they do internally in terms of training, because it's a really handy model to utilize. So even if you don't apply for an award, feel free to use the model that you're looking at now and use it internally, because it's been carefully designed, carefully crafted, and it will help you put together internal arguments as well as promote for award through the Princess Royal Training Awards. So Laura and Remy are available from now till the 31st of March, day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to answer all your questions. They prefer it during daylight hours, but if you get stuck at the weekends, give one of us a call and we're bound to answer. We do want to help you, and we do want to be there when you need the support. So do feel free to email, do feel free to phone, and we will do our absolute level best to be supportive of you in what you're trying to achieve through applying for Princess Royal Training Award. We haven't got any questions as far as I can see on the screen. I'm always slightly challenged at reading the screen from the end of the room, but Remy tells me we haven't any questions, which means either hopefully we've answered all the questions you've got, but if we haven't answered the questions, drop us an email and we'll do it, and we'll give you a call back during the course of the day and we'll talk to you about any questions that you've got. Fen, have you got any final comments for our potential applicants?
Yes, I'd say go for it. We're really ready and happy to receive your applications. And final thing, don't forget the learner voice. Do include quotes, or a quote, that's fine, from your learners. That really does help bring your application to life.
Well, I'm going to say goodbye, but I'm not going to say good luck, because these awards are not based on luck. These awards are based on evidence. And if you present your evidence to us in the right way and you tell your story well, then you will receive recognition through the Princess Royal for the amazing impact that L&D professionals are having across UK PLC. Right, we have a question. And right, the application forms are online.
Yes, they're online. So what you need to do, if you haven't done so already, is register your interest. And once you've done that, you get a unique link which takes you directly to the application form and the planner. And that link, you can use that to go back and forth every time you need to edit and amend your application until it's time to submit. But if you've already registered and you don't have your link, you can send us an email and we'll dig out your link and forward it to you.
So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Thank you for that question. Really good. If you can't get the application form, you can't apply. So this is a really important question. So thank you for that one. Like I say, you don't need good luck, because you've got your stories, you've got your evidence, and you're going to make the most of presenting it to us. Well, thank you for coming back. If you have other questions, do email us, do give us a call. We'll do everything we can to help you put together a superb presentation so that the Princess Royal will recognise the impact of the work you're having in your organisation. So thank you for joining us today on the webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you in due course. And even more importantly, we look forward to sharing a glass of champagne with you in the autumn at St James's Palace with the Princess. If that's not motivation enough, I don't know what is. So thank you for being with us today. Take care. Bye-bye.